Donald Trump sat staring at the clock, waiting for it to strike midnight, August 7th. Then he posted on Truth Social. It's midnight. Billions of dollars in tariffs are now flowing into the United States of America. All caps. Exclamation mark. After 4 delays in 4 months and a dizzying array of adjustments, President Trump's sweeping tariffs took on over 90 countries, took effect this week, with most foreign goods now facing a baseline 10% tariff and an average tariff rate of over 17%, which is the highest since the Great Depression. So far, Trump's tariffs have only moderately contributed to inflation, with many companies that import the goods absorbing the cost for now. But a lot of companies have signaled that price hikes aren't far off, and some of them are already starting. How might this all look in a real person's life? Well, we've got a real person. To answer that, let's check back in with our old friend Betty and her son Bobby. Bobby's gotten a lot older since then, but we'll update the graphic one of those days. At the moment, Betty has 150,000 miles on her car, but she has to act fast if she wants to buy a new one, because while prices haven't shot up just yet, Cox Automotive, a firm that works with automakers, expects the sticker price of a new model to increase anywhere from 4 to 8% this year alone. Now, think about this. The car, if you don't own a house, the car is probably the most expensive thing you own. 4 to 8% on a new car is a big deal. If you're thinking, Betty, my friend, just buy American. It's a little more complicated than that. Even Ford, which produces 80% of its cars in America, has already paid $1 billion in tariff fees and raised prices on a few models that are made in Mexico. So, looks like Betty might have to start walking a little bit more. Now, some new sneakers for those walks might be nice. Plus, Betty's son, Bobby, has aspirations of making the soccer team this year. But high tariffs on countries like Vietnam and India are weighing heavily on the clothing and textile industry. Adidas, Nike, Puma have all announced that they expect to hike prices for their sportswear. The Yale Budget Lab estimates that in the short term, shoe prices are going to shoot up 40% and apparel prices 38%. Bobby's soccer cleats from last year have a big hole in the toe, but they're going to have to do for now. And with a few less exercise outfits, Betty has to do more laundry. Bad news, Procter & Gamble, which makes Tide detergent and tons of other home goods, said in late July it would be raising prices by single-digit percentages after saying in April that the company was doing whatever it could to prevent price hikes. Betty is also an aspiring home chef, as you know, despite how Bobby may feel about her cooking. But even in the kitchen, she feels the pinch of these tariffs on basics like olive oil, often imported from Europe. That's also expected to cost more. And the Brazilian coffee she likes is going to run a few extra dollars because we now have a 50% tariff on Brazil. Worse yet, she can hardly afford to drink away the pain. Tariffs are threatening to raise the price on everything from Irish whiskey to wine from Spain, even on the aluminum that comes from Mexico and is used to make beer cans. For years, this interconnected global economy got Betty the basic consumer goods and cheap prices that she's enjoyed. The president has had his say. That's not going to happen any longer. All right, I want to talk a little more about this, more on how Trump's newest tariffs are going to affect you and me. I'm joined by Caleb Silver, editor-in-chief of Investopedia. Let's go over and sit down and talk about how some of these tariffs are going to affect people. The first point we made, Caleb, is that not everybody's passed them on just yet. Scott Bessent was on TV saying the importer will pay it, and then it's a choice as to whether they pass it on or not. The companies can only make that choice for so long.
Yeah, and we've heard from companies like Walmart who have said, look, the margins are so thin in retail, we have no choice but to pass a lot of those costs on, and they will. But it does depend on where the product is actually finished. That's a big deal. And who's going to pay that tariff? We've heard reports from Goldman Sachs and others that companies and countries are picking up the bill right now before the goods get to the United States. That's not going to last long because it's going to be a trade-off, Ali, between profit margins, which are so important to public companies, and how much they can afford in terms of price elasticity and how much we're willing to pay as consumers before we tap out.
So the conversation about profit margins, we're talking about Procter & Gamble or Best Buy or Nike or Walmart. That's very different from small businesses in America that import things.
Right.
They have no lobbyists. They have no say in the matter.
Right. And there's the president also got rid of the de minimis exemption for products that are $800 or less.
Right.
So many small businesses depending on those smaller imports just to run their small businesses, whether it's components or finished products. So a lot of people, consumers, small businesses, big enterprises, kind of left out here wondering what's going to happen. And the reality is prices are going up.
Let's talk about how you hedge against this. We were just talking about cars. Hard to know. What are you supposed to do? If you're Betty and you need a new car, what do? Hope that this all shakes down in a way that's better for you? Hope that car companies entice you because they're worried that you're not going to buy the new car? Like, what do you actually, how do you plan for this?
Yeah, you're going to have to look and wait to see if any companies offer some price reductions, and it's all about demand. You know, car companies, the U.S. auto sectors, we used to selling more than 10 million cars a year. We haven't had that in a while because auto mortgage rates, auto lending rates have been so high. But they're just getting more expensive because of the car parts, because of the steel, because of the aluminum, and because they've now gotten rid of that tax break for electric vehicles. So if you're thinking about buying a car, you had your chance over the last couple of months. We saw aggressive buying. The prices are going up.
Are you seeing anybody talking about strategies for the average person that can work? Because inflation's a tricky thing. Inflation's a tricky thing, and inflation as it relates to tariffs are a tricky thing because you've got to calculate what the company's going to do, how this is all going to go down. A lot of things like eggs, bananas, coffee, you can't stockpile. Right. But what is there a strategy that works here?
Yeah, and some companies and some families have been stockpiling in advance. We saw a lot of aggressive retail buying activity over the past couple of months, certainly in the auto sector, but you look across electronics and other sectors, we were buying things maybe we didn't need because we thought prices were going up. So you see that, you certainly see it on the small business side. But there's already so many unknowns. There's threats of tariffs against semiconductors as high as 100%. Allie, we use semiconductors for just about everything right now, but also, what's going to happen with copper tariffs? They were there, they weren't. So there's a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty paralyzes people, whether you're running a small business, whether you're investing or just trying to run your household.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump is trying really hard to get Jay Powell at the Fed to reduce interest rates. Now, interesting, lots of presidents would like lower interest rates. It's good on them. It makes people feel better. But we have higher than what he would like as interest rates because we still are trying to get inflation into the right spot.
Right.
This is generally speaking, the tariff thing is generally speaking inflationary, at least in the short term, until we've all adjusted and we're making all the sneakers we want in America and buying all the coffee, growing all the coffee beans and growing the bananas we want, which isn't going to happen. It is inflationary in the short term.
Yeah, tariffs are inflationary, full stop. And you know what else is potentially inflationary? Lower interest rates.
Right.
And incentivize us to spend more, right? We spend more. That drives up consumer spending, which drives the economy. Good thing, but at the same time, it drives up prices at the same time. So you're facing potentially a double whammy of inflation from tariffs, inflation from lower interest rates. The real reason the president wants lower interest rates is because it'll lower the interest payment we make on our national debt, which is just climbing every single day. That frees up a couple $100 billion potentially for this government to use in whichever way it wants.